Hey everybody, Tony D. Little Jones asleep on the couch, and there are no really good trailers to pick apart today. So this is just an old style hot take that I'm going to try not to get too political about because we all know how YouTube feels about those videos. Um, but this is something the Lotus Eaters talked about a lot, and that is demoralization. And the guy who taught this was an ex-KGB guy who defected to the United States, Yuri Bezmonov. And he said there were four stages of ideological subversion. And I have it here. The first is demoralization, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, but I'll read you the rest of them. Demoralization is to educate an entire generation in Marxist ideology, basically to hate themselves, and except for, unless you're a Marxist, in which case you can skip that step, I guess. The stage two is destabilization of the economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. Next is crisis, violent change of power, structure, and economy. And finally, normalization, a period of stability until the next cycle reaches a crisis point. So this is all about trying to subvert the United States. And a lot of people have talked about this. I'm certainly not the only one. But I thought I'd try to talk about some positive things to sort of fight demoralization, right? I think when you're faced with a lot of the horrible news, which you can see on my other channels on Bitchute and Rumble if you want to see the news and watch me sneer at it and make sarcastic comments. It can get very depressing, and if it's too much for you, the first step is to just stop listening to the news for a while. Seriously, even people watching me sometimes will just be like, oh God, you're so depressing sometimes. I get it. I get it. I'm mostly immune to it. I mean, although even I sometimes just like, ugh, I don't want to do these videos, but people seem to like me to burn through the headlines and just say stuff, so I keep doing it, but I'm having fun, kind of. I'm kind of performing. I'm not totally processing the headlines and news all the time, which is why sometimes I get some facts wrong or read the wrong thing or whatever. But I just like the attention. So, but for, someone hearing this stuff over and over again, you got to try not to be demoralized about it. You got to try to remember what's important in your life. Because ultimately, and one of the ways not to be demoralized is you can watch Sticks and Hammer, because Sticks and Hammer will tell you that the United States isn't going away. It's not going away. Yeah, we're going to have problems, but by and large, the sorts of people who engage in this demoralization, Marxist, communist, socialist, whatever you want to call them, subversives from foreign powers, they are in the minority. They don't have any support, any significant support, I should say. They just front that way. They're con artists, essentially, and grifters. So, you look at any of the guys who are on the internet who claim to have a huge following or have somewhat of a following, you have to understand that part of the tactics on the extreme left, and these guys are on the extreme left, is to pump themselves up bigger than they are. So Twitter must resort to censorship, as well as YouTube, as well as all these left-leaning platforms. They must result in censorship in order to weight the game in their favor. The Young Turks, who a lot of people talk about, and I kind of watch now and again just to sort of peer into their wacky world. And I watch Jimmy Dore sometimes just to see his battle between him and the Young Turks. Although I kind of got tired of Jimmy, I stopped listening to him. But, they are pumped up. They're astroturfed up to their eyeballs. No, the Young Turks could not survive in a fair competition. No one would watch them. No one. They wouldn't gain a following on their own, in my opinion. They would flounder and disappear within months. If they didn't have millions and millions of dollars behind them, if they didn't have the backing of YouTube and other, organizations that ostensibly agree with them politically, and they feel like they're doing something right and righteous by supporting them. And they are demoralizers in a sense, because they push this sort of left-wing agenda. Yeah, everything's terrible and we have to fight the right wing because they're all going to crush us. And I used to believe in a lot of that stuff. But, back in the 80s, there were right-wing maniacs and a bit of a power base there. It wasn't, as big as the left would have you believe, but it was there. I mean, back in the 80s, most people with money were Republicans. And there were a lot of religious guys in the Republican Party, and the religious right held a lot of sway, seemingly. And they too would build themselves up a little bigger than they were. But those people are out of power permanently. They're never coming back. Not to the power they were, unless, something major happens and everybody goes back to religion. They might come back a little, because people are more, now that sort of the religious stuff has kind of shaken out, and a lot of the scandals have come and go. I think the Catholic Church, though, apparently can't get enough scandal. Another one broke in, I think, Camden. People are kind of coming back to religion because they want a more traditional lifestyle, and the left has kind of run out of gas. After the left achieved a bunch of wins, they kind of had nowhere to go. Like after the left got civil rights, gay marriage, essentially beat back the religious right, they kind of didn't know what to do with that. And now you have people within that party pushing them further and further left. Like, aha, we finally got that. Okay, now it's time for the real stuff. That was never the intent back in the 80s at all for the Democrats. So the Democrats were, they were working class union types, which, it all boils down to politics is all about using the working people in the United States anyway to get yourself in a position of power until you don't need them anymore. Yeah. It's sad to say, but it's true. The Democrats have abandoned the working people because they don't need them anymore. What do you need working people for? They don't need them. And to some extent, they still kind of have them because they have still strong ties to the union. They still have major influence in media. They still have people who just believe the Democrats are for the working man and Republicans are still big business guys. They still believe that. I mean, it's 40, 50 years old, but they're older people, and they tend to believe that because they don't really drill down into politics all that much these days. They don't see the extremism yet because it hasn't really impacted them yet. But for those of us who see it and follow this stuff, it can get demoralizing after a while. But these guys ultimately destroy themselves. The left has been doing that for years and years and years and years. They go too far. As Sticks and Hammer often says, they overstretch and they fall over. They're overstretching again, I think, with the help of the people who put the neocons in power, probably the deep state or the military-industrial complex or whatever you want to call them, because now the Republicans are abandoning militarization very, very slowly and gradually. But the Democrats say, they can't get enough now. They can't get enough of war. They can't get enough of corporate globalism. Yes, war. Don't worry, we have the media in our pocket. They won't even report about it. But that's the number one thing I would say for demoralization. Get off of media. Definitely don't watch TV or read the newspapers anymore. In my view, they're pointless. They're so deceiving. Someone just sent me an article from our local paper, and I looked right under the headline, and it was reprinted out of the Seattle Times. So it's like, okay, you sent me an article from the Seattle Times, and this person didn't even realize it was from the Seattle Times, I'm sure. because they were just so anxious to try to prove their point on a certain medical issue, which I cannot say on YouTube, which has become the new way to demoralize people. Um, the headline agreed with their assessment, therefore, here, I'm right. See, I'm right. This headline agreed with me. What do you have to say about that? And then you're stuck arguing about this headline in some random newspaper that get reprinted out of another random newspaper. The people who are in control of the major media outlets, they want certain narratives to go. So if you write something that's very pro-narrative, it's going to be reprinted everywhere. And that's not really an issue whatsoever, right? It's not that, name me a big reporter these days in mainstream news. I mean, someone who can write an article and it's so wonderful and strong that it gets reprinted everywhere. That doesn't really happen in newspapers anymore. Used to happen back in the 80s. It would happen because that was a time where the internet didn't exist, so it was newspapers or TV and that's it. So you either got amazing footage that ended up on TV and then everybody saw it, or you wrote some amazing thing that's going around and everybody saw it. And because magazines and newspapers were slower and they'd roll out slower, by the time some amazing article or book or written thing would get around, it would be so widespread, you couldn't possibly turn around and, knock it down. Whereas on the internet today, the moment somebody puts something up, they can attack it mercilessly. And this has happened before. Someone's put out a perfectly sensible article about, let's say, a medical thing that I can't talk about on YouTube, and immediately it's attacked. Immediately it's, take that down. And that's happened. That's happened at some of the major media outlets. And people in YouTube will find this article and go, wow, this is a great article. Hey, everybody look at this. And then people go to it and it's not there, or it's been taken down, but the internet's forever. So they archive everything and there you go. But how do you keep yourself from demoralizing yourself? Well, again, stop watching the news for a while. Get yourself, get your head in a good space. Remember what's important, right? Your health's important, number one. So take care of yourself. And that means, I just did some cons recently, and I can't help but notice there are some extremely heavy-set people at the cons. And really, these people they are walking comorbidities. They should really think about losing some weight. Being heavy, being obese. And I'm not saying being a little heavy. Being a little heavy is not great, but it's not going to kill you. But being obese, that's bad. When you see somebody who's in their 20s or 30s and they're huffing and puffing and they look to be about 400 pounds and their gut is hanging past their crotch and they are just waddling, that's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. That person needs to stop whatever it is they're doing and try something new in terms of losing weight and getting healthy. So take care of yourself. That's numero uno. And part of taking care of yourself is taking care of yourself mentally. So take a mental health day if you need it. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed to go to therapy. Don't be embarrassed to take a day off just to sleep and breathe and relax. I do it once in a while. But don't go by me. I'm a weirdo. I'm kind of a weirdo. I really am. I'm not like a normal person. I don't function like a normal person that needs normal things. I'm a nut. I just like to, these days all I do is walk my dog and write books. I mean, that's pretty much all I do. I don't even watch TV anymore. I rarely play video games. I watch YouTube videos, make YouTube videos. It's about all I do these days. But I'm 55, so whatever. But, some of you out there, you got lives. Go do your hobby. Go do things that make you feel good. Check in with your family and friends. That's a grounding experience. Now, if you have family and friends that are harassing you about certain things, or maybe you don't have a good relationship, maybe work on that, or whatever you have to do to make that situation better. I don't know what that is. I don't want to get into your personal life, whatever. But, grounding yourself is often a good idea. And that's to keep you sane, keep you humble, stay humble, as they say, even if things are going great. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, as we said back in the 80s. Just sort of, take a minute to go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm doing good. Oh, hold on. Let me not say that thing that sounds incredibly arrogant or boring or whatever. And just try to know where you are. And then probably the next thing is to plan for the future, right? And you want to hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Meaning, don't blow your money on stupid things. Maybe save up a little money. Look ahead. I mean, we're heading for probably some rough times. All the prices are going up. There's going to be probably a rough economic couple of years for the Biden administration. Maybe try to not blow your money, even though you may have a bit of a nest egg saved up. I'm trying to save money. I went to the con this weekend. I packed my lunch. I don't normally do that. I like to. One of the joys for me of going to a con is, I'm going to go out to eat. Hooray. But I said, you know what? What am I going to blow all that money for? Even though somebody got a hamburger and I was ready to. Oh, it smelled so good. But I packed my lunch. I packed my lunch on Saturday. Just brought my lunch and ate that, and it's perfectly fine. I saved myself $20 that day. That's what you should do. You should try to save a little bit of money, in case things go south next year. Who the hell knows what's going to happen? And you won't feel so stressed out. Don't buy a bunch of things that you don't really need, and you know what you really need. And keep monitoring your overhead. That's a good suggestion. Know how much money you're bringing in and how much goes out each week or each month, probably month. You should treat yourself every day. Have a nice little, little snack, or spend a half hour watching a TV show you like, or whatever you do. But don't overdo it, right? Don't just veg out and spend hours getting nothing done. Get a little ahead for the coming years, the coming months and weeks, whatever. I have a lot of downtime right now. I'm back in freelance mode. I'm trying to get caught up on things. I'm trying to get some new work going for the next year. This is a good time for me to get my books written, to check on my resumes, and contact people old clients that I haven't worked with for a while. So that's what I'm doing. And I got the whole winter to do that, and I'm happy to be in front of my computer all day. But for those of you who need to get out more, get out more. Get out more, Don't be afraid to call an old friend you haven't heard from in years, and just call them up and say, hey, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. And remember, too, that even if this demoralization, destabilization crisis and normalization works, even the United States is going to hell in a handbasket, it's going to take decades for it to really impact you, So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, it's not like you can stop it if it's going to happen, right? And, if you're better prepared just to face things in the future in general, then if things do go into hell in a handbasket, you'll be ready. You'll be ready to move, or change your job, or whatever it is you have to do. So just keep educating yourself, keep improving yourself, and make sure your base of operations is stable, right? And look inward rather than outward when things get a little too much, from the demoralization end. Anyhow, that's my advice. I hope it's positive advice. I hope it finds you well. And I think we're all going to be okay. This is a tactic. A lot of people know about it. A lot of people are waking up to things like CRT, the medical situation, which I can't go into, a lot of different things. People are waking up to what happened with a certain president in a certain foreign country we left. They're waking up, and that's a good thing. It may, and yes, we've probably in for a couple of rough years, but it probably won't be that rough. I certainly thought the economy would be in bigger trouble than it is now. It's actually fairly resilient, I'm happy to say. So I don't know where you are in terms of your finances or whatever. I hope you're doing well. So this is Tony D saying, don't be demoralized. Be positive. Because I've always found being positive is a good thing. Because being negative stresses you out, right? I always say I use the backwards George Costanza method. If all the decisions in my life have been wrong, I just have to make the opposite ones. And I was always very negative, so I turned that around, and now I'm a happy boy. Anyhow, that's it for me. Little Joan and I will see you tomorrow.